All right, good morning, people. Happy Monday. Bob here, back once again, ready to break down some Bitcoin. Let's get down to it. Weekly chart in front of us here. So it was interesting as the weekend, well, not as the weekend, as Sunday was getting ready to wrap up. I'm sitting here, and we'll get in on the shorter term time frame so you can see what I'm talking about. But long story short, the 200 simple moving average on the weekly chart has gone up a couple $100 from where it was previously. Here you can see it was about 22.6. Now it's damn near 22.8. Here it was, when we came up and tapped it previously, it was about 22.5, something like that. So it's slowly made its way up. And as I'm sitting there yesterday, I'm like, man, if we could just finish out above somewhere in the neighborhood of 27.770 or so, I was figuring, all right, weekend's out great. We land on top of the support, and here we go. Let's make our way up to the next move. And again, I'll zoom in on the shorter term time frames, but it just, the moment it hit about 23,000, it just reversed course and just, I don't know, probably within that next hour, it lost, I don't know, several $100, $1,000. So here we are, weekly chart. This right here I've got on here is basically a daily support and resistance. So from a weekly standpoint, do I think that this thing's just going to hold here? It's questionable. I would be more inclined to believe that, we might test 21.1, 20,800, worst case, maybe down here, 19.7. All that being stated, with this fake out that we got here, and then yesterday we kind of got another bullish fake out, this thing could drag right down into the lower trend line here and potentially through it. It's feasible. I just don't know, obviously I don't know for sure, but I think that that's at least a potential feasibility. If we zoom in here on the RSI, you can see where we got this nice here. If I drew a line here, and here, like if we could just hold somewhere in where we're at this week, this would be a good opportunity for us to take this and push that up to the next level. And and I talked about this last week too, like that, I didn't know if we would need to come back down and test, this trend line. If it has to come all the way back down here, we're probably going to be in for a week that's going to feel as though things are about to come off the rails. May or may not after that, to be frank. But, that's what I see here. Now, the interesting thing is about this and this falling wedge pattern is that, technically speaking, it could spend the next several months just right here in this zone, right? That this falling wedge here that it broke out of to the bottom side and broke back into. Ideally, this thing ends up being a bearish fake out, and then this thing goes blasting off. But again, it's feasible. It could just sit in this range on the RSI until really November, and then we could see potentially push out of it. And who knows at that point, maybe then we start talking about, like 30K Bitcoin again, or, 28, 30. Do I still think that there's feasibility we get there in the next week or two? Sure. I just don't know. We really needed to finish above the 200 this week. I mean, it was so close. It was so close. All it had to do was finish above it, and we'd have been feeling a lot better about where we're at. But this is not exactly. I mean, we didn't want to see that happen. So. Again, still a possibility that there is this little, parabola that's forming. And it's probably easier to see on my daily chart, but I mean, this is still feasible, right? Like I can't negate the idea that this thing could still hold water. And then this will come in here. The 21 simple's right there. On the daily, it's going to act as support, and then off we go. And you could make some arguments that it's feasible that will happen because, you look across here and you got, these levels. You've got these levels here. We had a break above. Gotta hold them. Gotta hold them though. Otherwise, this thing comes back again down into here, and then comes down to here, and then potentially down to here. So again, ideally we just hold this level right here, right? And like I said, it's a lot easier to see on my daily chart where this trend line, or not trend line, but this horizontal support and resistance comes into play. I did mention last week on Friday, I said, man, I really thought there was a chance we may wick down to this level again. And again, now I think it's actually far more likely that we would see it. Will it happen? Again, tough to say. But I think now it's a far more likely scenario that we do, in fact, get a wick that comes down and tests here. And if that happens, well, then that puts us right there. Then the only problem is, all right, does Bitcoin then hold this level? And then if it does it come back up here and then flip this into resistance? All of a sudden, you've got the formation starting where this looks like a head and shoulder pattern that would potentially form. Measured move would basically be from here. It's pretty close, actually. I mean, it would be here to here if it did form up a head and shoulder pattern, and then all of a sudden you're down here again, 15.8. Man, I'll be frank. I really thought for sure that yesterday we were gonna, because you can see here it was green, and then there was a point in time, and I can zoom in a little bit here for you so you can see it. But there was a point in time. I mean, it was green most of the day yesterday. This candle was, but at one point it was actually up to about here. And then obviously it rounded out the day coming up to here and then just getting smacked down. So, yeah, that it would have been much more ideal if this thing had not only ended in the green, but ended in the green and put in a higher high than this candle did, but we did not get that. So here we are dealing with what we're dealing with. So, to be frank, I would say that, this is already a pretty decent downside candle for the day, so I'd like to think that maybe at some point during the day we actually make a positive move, maybe up here in this 22.2 region. And then if we are going to continue downward, then we at least put in some upward move during the day. Tomorrow maybe brings us down into here or here. And then it's just a matter of whether or not this thing actually does come back off the rails. I mean, we got a lot of volume that came in over the last a couple of weeks, really, but like specifically over the last 2 weeks, we've got a ton of volume come in. And it does seem as though the max volume tends to be when it's peaking out on these moves. Again, here you've got a mass amount of volume at the top of a move, mass amount of volume at the top of a move. Again, I always say all the time, it's somebody's buying it, somebody's selling it, right? So, but ideally, I would rather see a massive volume come in on the bottom of a move, right? Because that would suggest that the bulls are showing up to go ahead and buy the life out of it. Whereas, a huge amount of volume that comes in at the top of a move says, man, a lot of people see this as like bad news that's coming, right? And that they would just assume get out of that position as soon as possible. So we'll see. I mean, again, we've still got chances. This thing's got to come back up here and 22.150, maybe 22.4 and some change. Again, if it does want to wick down here, I'm fine with that. I just want to see it bounce real hard off of that level if it is going to happen. Because if it doesn't, then again, I'm prepping for downside. But, Bitcoin just, negate these last four candles. And we were here the other day, and I'm like, man, it did exactly what it needed to. It keeps bouncing off these supports. And then here, this was Friday. This thing came up here and then just... so it's done that a few times this weekend, kind of some bullish fake outs and reversals. Right now it looks like it's hovering pretty well around that 21.9 and change region. Let's go ahead and zoom in on some of the shorter term time frames so we can get a feel for what we've really got. It's tough to base that off of daily and weekly charts as much. But here, so we had this kind of ascending, broadening wedge look And it's a bearish pattern inherently. We've talked about this enough times that you guys know that's an inherently bearish pattern. Yes, it's going vertical, but then it's always going, well, not always, but more often than not, it will come back down and break down below the lower trend line. Whereas, again, falling patterns are inherently bullish. And this one, it didn't hurt that this one had this bearish fake out that came up here. But now, again, like I said, and I highlighted this, and I think I had talked about it last week. I mean, we've got this right here that looked like it was potentially going to be a bearish or a bullish fake out. Seems like it worked out that way. And now it's kind of flagging up here. So I think this is going to be the key right here. I mean, I one of two things, we're either going to make a push back up into the, here, or this thing's just going to drop straight on out of here. We'll see which one it wants to do. RSI on the 4 hour, it is kind of clinging to that 40 spot, which means that the Bears haven't taken over control yet. It would be once you lose that level that you would start to look at it and say, all right, well, the Bears are in control now. I just gotta, kind of stay bearish on the 4 hour for now. But this thing's going to break out to the upside at some point, right? So that's the one thing we got going for us. This thing will break out to the upside at some point. If it breaks to the bottom, great, because that means it should end up being at some point. And I would tell you that if it breaks down here, it's not going to happen immediately, but it should. If it broke down here, I would say that would be another bearish fake out in the RSI, and in that case, we go popping up out of there. But again, just kind of looking at this little, this overall structure here, falling wedge, falling channel, possible bull flag. We'll see what it ends up being, but I would say in general you'd be okay being long here up into this range or this range. Let's see now. I don't know. Hourly chart doesn't look amazing. Same idea though. We got this kind of falling channel, bull flag looking thing. And we've got, again, each of these charts is mildly different. They're not, they're not perfect since they're all different exchanges, but, we've still got this scenario where, got this lower trend line here, and then, had this ascending broadening wedge here, pulling back out of that. Yeah, this is a tough one at the moment. I'd say, if we stick to the longer term views, again, we're still so far into the oversold on the weekly. Well, not, and at this point, it actually is finally up out of oversold, but we're still so far down on here on the weekly that it would be difficult for me to just sit here and say, oh no chance that it's going to pop to the upside at some point. Because again, if we were over here, I'd say, man, tough to believe that we're going to put in a ton of upside, right? We're at overbought levels on the weekly, and then that obviously led to all this. But down here, I mean, when the RSI is down here, the last thing I want to do is start looking at shorts. All right, it's the last thing I want to consider is shorting the market when it's way down here. Now, that's not to say you can't do it on a day-to-day or a couple-hour basis. Just the last thing you want to do is look into major shorts while you're already down here in fairly oversold territory. So again, much more inclined to believe that even if we get some downside days, the overall uptrend could and or should remain intact. We'll see. And again, 4 hour here. As long as this thing can hold on to this, I mean, this 40 level is very important. Again, it's where the control of the market takes and moves into the hands of the bears. So we would just assume hold this on the 4 hour chart. It's been a couple weeks since we've been down below that level, which has been nice. But obviously, it can't go on forever. And if it does at least continue, that would be great. Then we come up here, maybe break it this time, and then we're back up here again. This being a 4-hour chart, kind of looking everything over, I mean, it's probably several days away from anything taking place that would break it out of this pattern. So we're not necessarily looking for an immediate, level of excitement out of what we're looking at right this moment, but feasible that here in the next several days we got something going for us that'll put us back to the upside. Let's get in on the shortest term time frame as usual. Let's just kind of see what we got going on there. 15-minute chart, and here, this is where I can show you a little more clearly what happened yesterday. And I was talking to Matt, and I said, man, we've got a green day going. If we can finish up above this level, and then I could show you even on shorter time frames just how insane this move actually was. Just 1 minute, all of a sudden it's up here. It looks like it may push up out of it, and then all of a sudden, it went from 23,000 basically to 22.5 over a matter of minutes, and then kind of came back up into this region, and then just capitulated since. Now, after seeing this, now I feel pretty good overall about where my Fibonacci levels are. Because this was kind of a perfect bullish fake out. You had all this price action that just kept getting rejected here. You finally get that break, and a breakout buyer, a breakout trader, your goal is to buy the breakout of trends and or horizontal support and resistance, and this was a no-brainer, right? Hey, we broke it, boom, buy that, and if you sold it here, you're great, and if you didn't, you just got dragged down into the pits of despair. And again, just kind of looking at this little structure here, I mean, it seems fairly likely and or at least reasonable to believe that this thing does have some more downside in it. Probably reaches this 0.5 Fibonacci level at this point at a minimum. What I was hoping to see was we hold this 382 reverse fib, which would tell me that we still have a bullish outlook. By having lost that, I don't know if we do still maintain the bullish outlook, because anytime you get a bounce off of a 382 reverse fib, that's as bullish as you can get besides the 236. Now we've got to assume that we're probably going to come down in here and test out some of these lower levels, where this would really be the one that you'd be looking for as the max low for now. Not to say it will be the low. I mean, it could go lower, but for now, the max low there. And then this 702 would work out fairly well also. And then the 618. So again, and these are all numbers that we've already pointed out on the longer term charts, specifically this one right here, 21,086. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing what Bitcoin has in store for us. Looking forward to getting us some big hitters here, and really just looking forward to catching up next time. We appreciate y'all, and we'll talk soon.